this is Faith at House Fraud Homestead. First things first, apologies for the thumbnail. That is not indicative of my views necessarily on this issue. I'm just getting bored with thumbnails, quite frankly, and I'm tired of seeing my peeled onion mug in every single thumbnail and thought I'd shake it up a little bit. So, apologies if that gave anyone the wrong impression. I have no horse in this race necessarily, but what I want to talk about today, more than my thoughts on the conspiracy itself and whether it's true, is what it's bringing out and reinforcing in the homesteading community, and where I think that can get poisonous and counterproductive. So, for those who aren't aware, the Eggspiracy, as they call it, or the Tractor Supply conspiracy, goes something like this. Tractor Supply feed allegedly has some RNA sequencing ingredient that has been recently added with a deliberate intention to curtail backyard egg production. And the motivation behind this supposedly is that Tractor Supply feeds are owned by Dumore, which is owned by Purina, which is owned by Land O'Lakes, which also produces eggs as a product. So I can see where people would think that that's plausible. I'm not saying it's implausible. And I think it's very human when you're in a lifestyle that's kind of against the grain and gets some flack, to feel like if you're having a failure, it's deliberate sabotage. It can reinforce and galvanize your will to keep doing what you're doing in the face of people telling you that it's redundant or it's unnecessary or it's silly. And a lot of influential people in the homestead community are reinforcing this belief. And so it's almost a community building thing to feel like your and our troubles right now with having egg supply during an egg shortage are not only shared, but deliberately caused by an outgroup and by the system that you are railing against. It can be, I think, comforting in some ways to believe that and not grapple with the reality, I think, that chickens and livestock and the homesteading life in general have a lot of variables that are outside our control because we're working with nature. So, do I think that there is absolutely a conflict of interest with profit motivation? Yes. Do I think that we have been deliberately sabotaged by a producer of feed? No. For a few reasons. One being that with these kind of very shady practices, it is very hard for people directly involved in them, like employees, to keep their mouths shut. So I think we would have had a whistleblowing case some time ago. This is a point my husband made, that it would not be something that we'd have to theorize about. Someone would have pulled the curtain up on this who knew about it, most likely. And also, I mean, I'm sure we have folks capitalizing on the egg shortage because they can, and why wouldn't you? But the egg shortage, I believe, is caused first and foremost by throwing the baby out with the bathwater with bird flu. Whether or not you think bird flu is real, I'm not going to argue about that, but objectively, more birds died than needed to because of overcrowding in commercial egg operations. If you have to kill every bird that could have possibly come in contact with a bird that's tested positive, that's where you get millions of birds gone fairly needlessly. And so we can talk at another point about how maximum efficiency is minimum resiliency, but that's a big reason why eggs are as expensive as they are today. And in terms of why backyard chickens aren't laying right now, everyone will tell you, A, it's winter, B, chickens are the ones that everyone got during COVID are now at an age where they're not going to lay through the winter when they would have in their first winter, that kind of thing. I'm coming from a position of not entitlement, but some expectation that my new birds are at an age and stage where they should be laying right now, and they're not. I have 6 9-month-old hens, or I guess they're getting on 10 months old, and only 2 out of those 6 have laid anywhere near consistently. 4 out of 6 only laid in December, which is, ironically enough, the only time when they would naturally slow down because it's the lowest amount of daylight. And I don't feed Tractor Supply feed. I never have. I think in my case, and probably in a lot of other people's cases, we've had record temperatures around the country with once-in-a-generation weather events that are stressful on birds. And a reality of a lot of, different creatures' reproductive systems is that extreme weather events are not a good time to make babies. So I think that is contributing to a delay in production relative to past years, irrespective of age and stage of flock. I also personally have noticed a correlation that I'm testing right now between feeding corn and getting eggs. That's not to say that feeding corn causes you to not get eggs, but a lot of folks are hopping on the corn and soy free organic bandwagon right now. And, for health reasons for humans for the most part. But anecdotally, the 1 month when I got eggs consistently from all my girls corresponded to the 1 month that I couldn't find corn and soy free feed and had to feed with corn. So now I'm thinking that those simple carbohydrates might contribute to their being able to keep their circulation and their body temperature up to get through those extreme weather events. So that's something I'm testing personally, might be something to try in your case. Other factors can be availability of water, availability of grits, light, of course. But there's so many factors in why chickens don't lay, and I think a level of serenity is necessary when you're trying to live more in harmony with nature, that sometimes nature's not going to line up with your schedule and your needs. And that can be frustrating when you've bucked a system that a lot of folks are dependent on by default to go your own way and live off the land and things like that. Sometimes famine happens, scarcity happens, and it doesn't necessarily mean that someone's deliberately sabotaging you. And my main concern with this conspiracy, irrespective of whether it's true or not, is what it's reinforcing amongst the homesteading crowd. And that is a spirit of reactivity and fear and doing this in spite of instead of because of. And I think that's a dangerous motivation to have. I mean, I get where you can be inspired to go a different direction when you're taking in cues from your immediate environment that this isn't the best way. And I think that's healthy. But a lot of countercultural movements rely on an antagonist to validate themselves. Like, we wouldn't be doing what we were doing unless we had an enemy. And I think it's easy to make commercial producers of food, etc., the enemy so that we can continue validating what we're doing. And I say this as someone who grew up in a, if not reactive homesteading, a reactive homeschooling environment where a lot of knee-jerk reactions were made, sorry, it's a doorbell, in response to perceived threats from the outside. And I think what this puts us at risk of is making decisions we otherwise wouldn't, that may not end up that they end up being reliant on something going wrong to be worthwhile. So, like, I don't consider myself a prepper because, first and foremost, I don't feel the need to be the last man standing. I don't feel the need to be right when everybody else is wrong. And also, I don't want to have my decisions informed by distrust necessarily. I want to have my decisions informed by greater trust in myself and my environments. And I don't think you need to be distrustful of the exterior forces to learn to trust yourself more and to learn to trust your experience and um, the fact that we are not totally in control in this life and in this lifestyle. So I'm trying to make this channel more a place where we do things for good reasons instead of to spite bad reasons. So I had another video recently about good and bad reasons to get backyard chickens, and I think those stand irrespective of whether backyard chicken keeping is actively being sabotaged and whether there's any kind of conspiracy to get us all eating battery farmed eggs. And I would just encourage healthy skepticism about anything that makes you reactive and fearful and makes knee-jerk reactions and purchases feel more validated. I think we're going to see this year a lot of people dumping feed that's worked for them in the past and buying chickens to raise when they might not be well prepared for it because of this fear that all those things are going to go away. And there are so many good reasons to do what we do that don't have anything to do with what's going wrong in the world. The way I see it, if I was wrong about everything wrong in the world, and in 50, 60 years from now, we were in some kind of utopia, I would not regret making the decisions I made to build my skill sets and have a layer of redundancy against supply chain pressures. Because if we treat this as cooperative with established systems instead of reactive against them, we don't need to make it a personal failing if we have to go buy eggs or something like that. I don't think we need anyone to be out to get us for this lifestyle to be a good idea for some people. So that's my 2 cents on that. I don't think we need to fear these outside forces to the extent that we're making different decisions than we normally would. So there's lots of things to try. There's other influences to listen to. And all you can really figure out is what works for you and your flock, irrespective of what everyone else is observing. So if Tractor Supply works for you, it works for you. If a Tractor Supply doesn't work for you, you can try something else. If something is different this year than last year, it could be any number of things. It may or may not be the feed you're feeding. There's a non-zero possibility that some feed suppliers had to make cuts or substitutions to their formula due to supply chain issues. I think that's understandable and possible. So it might be that some ingredients is interacting differently with birds, but I don't think it's necessary to assume malicious intent with this. I don't think it's constructive. I think if this is a lifestyle that appeals to you and a decision that appeals to you, there doesn't need to be a foil or an foil, tinfoil. No. I think it's ultimately healthier and more positive and speaks better to about us as a movement and a lifestyle and a hobby if we're not the first to claim the sky is falling. I think, you gain more flies with honey than with vinegar, and I think if we believe truly that the way to go is to increase resiliency by doing for ourselves, we don't need there to be an antagonist there. So that's my 2 cents on that. Hope that made sense. Go check out my other egg keeping video, or egg keeping. chicken keeping video. If you haven't seen it already, if you're considering getting hens right now, but just take all this stuff with a grain of salt right now. I think we're going to have inconclusive evidence in a few months when some chickens start laying and some don't, and some were fed tractor supply and some weren't, and there's not a clear correlation, and I don't think it's worth getting your proverbial feathers ruffled about. So I'll talk to you next time. Bye.